Oh hi. Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the state in East Asia, widely known under the unofficial name North Korea. It is located in a northern part of the Korean peninsula. It has overland border with the Republic of Korea in the south. The states are divided by the demilitarized zone. People's Republic of China in the north, the Russian Federation in the northeast. From the west the country is washed by the Yellow Sea, from the east the Sea of Japan. The area of the country is 120,540 km. The population, according to 2019, more than 25 million people. Also the 53rd in population. Seoul takes the 98th place in the world across the territory. The capital and the largest city, Pyongyang. A state language, Korean. According to the constitution, is the unitary socialist state. The power in the country belongs to the only political party, the Workers' Party of Korea, led by Kim Jong-un, holding the presidency since the end of 2011. Official state ideology, Juche. It is subdivided into 14 administrative and territorial units, from which 9 are provinces, 2 the cities of direct submission, and 3 special administrative regions. Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the monoethnic state, Koreans make about 99% of the population. Vast majority of the population atheists. The industrial and agrarian country with hybrid developing economy. PDD volume face value for 2017 was $17.364 billion US. About $685 US per capita. Monetary unit North Korean won. The Korean statehood conducts the history of the 3 centuries BB. By results of World War II, Korea, which before was under the administration of the Japanese Empire, was divided into the northern part, which turned into maintaining the USSR, and the southern, controlled USA. Democratic People's Republic of Korea was proclaimed in the territory of the Soviet zone of occupation on September 9, 1948, after the basis of the Republic of Korea on August 15 within the American zone of occupation. The subsequent to it the Korean War, 1950-1953. Fixed division of the country. In world public consciousness, perception of the DPRK's totalitarian dictatorship became stronger. Adhering to policy of isolation, the country occupies some of the last places among the states of the world on a number of social and economic indicators, and accumulation of nuclear capacity of the DPRK is a tension source in the region. Democratic People's Republic of Korea is located in East Asia, in the north of the Korean peninsula. Has overland border with 3 states. In the north with China on the Anokan and Tumengang rivers. In the northeast with Russia down the river Fogi. Tumengang. In the south with the Republic Korea. In the west it is washed by the Yellow Sea and Korea Bay, and in the east the Sea of Japan. The area of the state minus 120,540 km. The land minus 120,410 km. Water minus 130 km. The government of the DDR territorial waters of the country announced the water area adjacent to the coast within a 12-mile zone. 224 km. The state territory, mainly mountain, cut up by a set of valleys and ravines. In the north of the country, the North Korean mountains, which enter the Manchukuo mountain system, tower and separate from East Manchurian mountains the Yalu rivers and Fadi. All mountain complex, the highest point of the Korean peninsula, a volcano Paektusan. 2744 m. Crowns. Along the northern coast of the Sea of Japan, Ridge Hamjin with the maximum height more than 2500 m. Van Mobin. And having several tens more peaks more than 2000 meters high was stretched. Between this ridge and a volcano Paektusan Plateau Kima, which is cut through by several mountain chains going from border with China to Ridge Hamjin and the coast of the Sea of Japan, was located. The most significant of them, Nanamsan and Macaulay. In the southeast of the country, rocky and clumpy East Korean mountains which along the coast of the Sea of Japan go to South Korea are allocated. The main element of this mountain system, Ridge Chibek, having the alternative name Kimgansan, that is translated as Diamond Mountains. Their maximum height within the DDRK -1638 m. Ridge Puktaban stretched near the city of Wonsan connects Diamond Mountains to the Manchukuo mountain system. In the west, the DDRK lies the Pyongyang Plain. The narrow lowland is available also on the coast of the Sea of Japan. The nature of the country is very picturesque. There is a set of reserves and national parks. The extracted minerals include coal, lead, tungsten, zinc, graphite, magnesium, iron, copper, gold, pyrite, salt, fluorspar, etc. The territory of North Korea has a temperate monsoonal climate with 4 separate seasons. In the winter, transfer of cold air masses from Siberia prevails. There are breaks of warmer air from China and the Pacific Ocean. Sunny and dry weather prevails. The most severe conditions are observed in mountains in the north of the country. Here, average temperatures of January are 10. -20 C, absolute minimums reach 35. -40 C and below. The softest, short and snowless winter is available on the southwest and southeast coast of the country. In the afternoon here usually there is a sunny weather with above zero temperatures, and at night strike light or moderate frosts. Several times during the winter there are cold snaps to sub-zero daytime temperatures and snowfalls. Snow thaws quickly. Absolute minimums made here 20. -25 C. Average temperatures of January 1. -4 C. In the neighborhood of Pyongyang and on the northeast coast, winter moderate and cold with average temperatures of January 4. -9 C and absolute minimums in 25. -30 C. Steady snow cover here too is absent. In the summer, Korea becomes the arena of fight between the Western trends for downloading tropical air from depths of Asia and the Pacific monsoon bearing sea freshness, overcast and fogs in May, June and sea tropical air with plentiful downpours in July-September. In the same months, typhoons sometimes collapse. The most cool and short summer is noted in mountains in the north of the country. The hottest and long, up to 5 months and more, on the coast of the Yellow Sea and East Korea Bay. Average temperatures of August are +23, +25 C here. Towards border with Russia, duration of summer decreases to 3.54 months, average temperatures of August up to +21. +23 C. To the same figures, water in August in an open part of the Sea of Japan on average gets warm. In shallow bays and in the Yellow Sea is 2-3 degrees higher. Osakov drops out from 600 to 1400 May year. In the territory of North and South Korea there are only about 3,400 species of the higher vascular plants, with a considerable share of tree species. Remarkable feature of the DPRK is growth here of native Listopadni types laurel, Lindera obtusiloba, and a holly and also Zybald's magnolia in the conditions of not subtropical winters. In the DPRK, a high variety of coniferous breeds, lianas and beautifully blossoming bushes. The majority of the rich radical woods of plains and Niskogoria was replaced with arable lands, pastures and gardens. Also the part of coniferous and broad-leaved forests underwent cutting. Later on a place began to land the forest cultures of a pine, larch and fir tree. North Korea lies entirely in a natural zone of the broad-leaved woods. Shirokolistenalisni landscapes belong to the category of subboreal, warm and moderate landscapes. At mountains there are high-rise belts conditionally similar to taiga zones. Boreal landscapes, B. And the tundra. Subarctic landscapes, SA. The broad-leaved woods up to 500 m, mixed up to 1100 m, coniferous -1700 m, the tundra from 2000 m. Alpine belt, tundra, SA. Characteristic breeds: dryad, cloudberries, silverweed, cowberry, poppy, rhododendrons lapish, Radovsky. Subalpine belt: Emmons birch, alder green, cedar St. Lanic, juniper Siberian, rhododendron golden, mountain ash buzinalistni. Belt of dark coniferous forests, B. Fir trees Ansky and Korean, a fir bellicori, a larch, birches, mountain ashes Pokwashansky. Amur. And mixed. Belt of the coniferous and broad-leaved woods. Korean cedar, fir black, yew, yew, lindens, elms, maples. 9-10 types. Cherries, Actinidia. Belt of the broad-leaved woods. Wixnut, chestnuts the softest and garroshety, hornbeams, frameworks, mulberries, storax, varnish tree, coreateria. In the territory of North Korea, tigers, leopards, bears, lynxes and wolves occur among predators generally. The eagle, a snipe, a crane, a heron, a pheasant, a black grouse and a hazel grouse can be widespread North Korean birds. Such animals as foxes, boars, gorilla, roes, dappled deers, Mancunian deer, columns, otters and proteins are found in forests. In the territory of the Korean People's Democratic Republic, the set of bird species meets. Among them is sparrow, herons, cranes, storks, geese, ducks, sandspurs, seagulls, cormorants, auks, willets and chistiki. Reservoirs are rich with fish and seafood. As of 2004, the territory of the country was divided into 9 provinces, 2 cities of direct submission, and 3 special administrative regions. The capital, Pyongyang. The large cities of the DPRK, except Pyongyang, 3,702,757 inhabitants. Sinyeshu, Card. Kisong, Card. Nampyo, Card. Kansin, Card. Wonsan, Card. Saravan, Card. Sunam, Card. Amin, 768,551. Heiju, Card. Hangi, Card. Hysan, Card. Kimchek, Card. The DPRK, the monothenic state. Koreans make about 99% of the population. There are Chinese, about 5,000 people, and Japanese, about 1,800 people. Ethnic minorities. Official language, Korean. Between dialects of 2 Korean states there are many distinctions, but carriers of different options of Korean can understand each other. In 1910-1945 Korea was colonial possession of Japan. After the end of World War II, the territory of Korea to the north of the 38th parallel was under control of the Soviet Union, and to the south the USA. The USSR and the USA wasn't succeeded to agree about association of the country, that led to formation in 1948 of 2 various governments, Northern, pro-Soviet, and Southern, pro-American, each of which applied for control over all Korea. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, was formed on September 9, 1948 in response to education in the south of the Korean peninsula of the Republic of Korea. The political power was monopolized by the Workers' Party of Korea since the very first years of existence of the DPRK. In economy, the planned economy was established. Approximately since 1949, practically all industry, domestic and foreign trade is under control of the state. In 1950, contradictions between 2 Korean states led to the beginning of the Korean War. On June 25, 1950, troops of the DPRK crossed the border with the Republic of Korea and intruded on her territory. In the war continuing 3 years, about 1.3 million Koreans were killed and wounded. More than 80% of housing stock, industrial and transport infrastructure of both states are destroyed. On side of South Korea, the USA, Great Britain and some more countries under the flag of the Union. On side of North Korea, China were involved in war. Military aid was rendered also by CCC. The Korean War ended with truce in 1953. In the political plan, position of the DPRK worsened because of break in relations between the People's Republic of China and the USSR, which began in 1960. In the 1978 years, growth rates of economy of the DPRK slowed down a little, in comparison with post-war years, but nevertheless industrial outputs, the national income and welfare of the population continued to grow steadily up to the end of the 1980s. Kim Il-sung's son died in 1994, and the son, Kim Jong-il, became his successor. In days of his board, national economy stagnated and continued to remain isolated. In July 2002, it was announced the beginning of reforms. The currency of the country was devaluated, and prices of agricultural products were unfrozen in hope to stimulate the agrarian market of the country. The collective farm in the village was decided to replace with the farms constructed by the family principle. Increase in foreign investments resulted. Only China invested $200 million in national economy in 2004. In 2007, after the visit of the President of the Republic of Korea to the DPRK, both countries in common appealed to the Union to promote reunification of Korea. On December 17, 2011, Kim Jong-il died, and already on December 31, 2011, his youngest, third son Kim Jong-un became his successor. Kim Il-sung's death in 1994 coincided with a set of the serious problems in the country caused by heavy expenses on army. Considering development of the nuclear missile program, disintegration of the socialist camp, and a rupture of traditional economic relations. Despite need to solve these problems, the past 3 years after the death of the father, before Kim Jong-il became the official leader of the state, the chairman of the State Committee of Defense, SCSI, the post of the president was abolished. The late Kim Il-sung was proclaimed by the eternal president of the republic. In the second half of the 1990th years in the DPRK, according to A. Lankov, the silent death of North Korean Stalinism occurred. The termination of the help from the USSR led to a large-scale economic crisis, first of all, to the constant shortage of food. In the mid-90s, Massachusetts hunger claimed the lives, by different estimates, from 250,000 to 2 million inhabitants of Nieder. In this connection, there was a legalization of small private business and shuttle trade to China. Also, many other restrictions are actually cancelled. In 2000, Kim Jong-il, trying to bring the country out of the international isolation, said that the DPRK is ready to refuse the program of creation of intercontinental rockets in exchange for the help of the international community in development of North Korean astronautics. However, in 2 weeks I made of the statement light. Obviously, the similar initiative was rejected by collective leadership of the DPRK at the beginning. Later, however, the most severe economic crisis forced North Korean leaders to return to the offer. The DPRK and the USA already began to discuss a possibility of a visit to Pyongyang of the American President Bill Clinton, but in November 2000 in the USA, elections were won by George Bush, who announced "Crusade" mines North Korea, and dialogue broke. In due time, a number of media regularly issued publications about the possible successor of Kim Jong-il. Among possible candidates called his son-in-law Jang Song-taek and also sons Kim Jong-nam, Kim Jong-kakolya and Kim Jong-yuan. Kim Jong-il died on December 17, 2011. On December 24, in the central publication of DPRK, the Rodong Sinmun newspaper, Kim Jong-un was for the first time called the Supreme Commander of the Korean National Army. We swear bloody tears to call Kim Jong-un our Supreme Commander, our leader. On the night of December 31 of the Politburo of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea officially appointed him the Supreme Commander Armed Forces of the country. According to the North Korean newspaper, Rodong Sinmun, it is confirmed to the post of the chairman of the Central Committee of Labor Party of North Korea. Right after he became the head of the DPRK, many began to compare him to Mikhail Gorbachev. On April 15, 2012, during the military parade devoted to the 100th anniversary of the birth of Kim Il-sung's son, Kim Jong-un for the first time acted en public. The innovation in a political lexicon of the country is connected with a name of the new head of the DPRK. The course conducted by him received the name Pyeonsan. That is translated as parallel development. The balance of influence of the authorities between party and army structures was restored. Practice of holding regular congresses and other meetings of party structures, including at the grassroots level, is resumed. The amendments to the party charter and the constitution of the DPRK adopted in recent years gave to the Politburo new authority. In general, the policy of Pyeonsan speaks as policy of parallel economic growth and building of nuclear arsenals. The investment in the nuclear industry is considered by North Korean leaders as more effective remedy of maintenance of defense capability of the country in comparison with modernization of army conventional weapon. The existing constitution of the DPRK defines the DPRK as the sovereign socialist state representing the interests of all Korean people. According to the constitution, the power in the country belongs to workers, peasants, the labor intellectuals, all working people. According to A.N. Lankovsky, ruling regime of North Korea lost initial ideological filling, left the ideas of reorganization of society and turned into the quasi-class monarchy. According to a group of diplomats and experts of the Russian National Committee of the Asia-Pacific Council of Cooperation on Safety, a support of the power in North Korea is the nomenclature ruling class created within decades, on the basis of blood, solid numerous family and friendly relations. Only form of government DPRK, hereditary absolute monarchy with the cruel repressive mode. The nomenclature aristocracy and the maximum closeness from the outside world. The world misled, the DPRK won't refuse nuclear weapon, the Russian diplomat of the interview with G.F. Kennedy, on June 13, 2018. The Supreme People's Assembly consists of 687 deputies elected on the basis of general equal and direct suffrage ballot for 5 years. Elections uncontested. Officially appears that government candidates were supported by 100% of voters. Elections to the Supreme People's Assembly of the 12th Convocation took place on March 8, 2009. Elections to the Supreme People's Assembly of the 13th Convocation took place on March 9, 2014. Elections to the Supreme People's Assembly of the 14th Convocation took place on March 10, 2019. The collective head of state and permanent body, Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly of the DPRK. During the period between plenary sessions it carries out meetings of Presidium, in which the Chairman of Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly, his deputies and the Secretary participate. Unlike plenary sessions, in which the Chairman, Vice Chairman, the Secretary and Dicks participate. The Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly was created by the Constitution of 1948 and abolished by the Constitution of 1972. His functions were divided between the Permanent Council of the Supreme People's Assembly performing functions of the Supreme People's Assembly between his sessions, and the Central National Committee being the collective head of state, along with the individual head of state, the President, whose position was entered by the same Constitution and is restored in 1998. On July 16, 2018, the Rodong Sinmun newspaper reported that the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly (SPA) of the DPRK issued on July 12 Decree No. 2318 on carrying out amnesty, which is dated for the 70th anniversary of creation of the DPRK. It is specified also that prisoners will begin to be released from prison since August 1, and the government and the relevant organizations and departments will take measures that released could get used and begin to work in society. The government, the cabinet, which members, except for the Minister of National Army, are appointed by the Supreme People's Assembly. It is created by the Constitution of 1948. By the Constitution of 1972 it is renamed into Administrative Council. Again I received the former name in 1998. The Chairman of the Cabinet, Kim Jae-rens. Since April 11, 2019. The Cabinet is obliged and authorized to direct work of all committees, ministries, subordinated institutions and local national committees, to make the State Development Plan for the national economy and to take measures for his implementation, to make the state budget and to take measures for his execution. The Cabinet takes measures for strengthening of a monetary banking system, signs contracts with the foreign states and knows external relations, takes measures for maintaining public order, protection of property and the interests of the state and the cooperative organizations and ensuring the rights of citizens. Article 119. State Treasury Bills is the supreme body of the military power. After Kim Il-sung's death, the chairman of State Treasury Bills since 1993, Kim Jong-il, Kim Il-sung's son, became the actual leader of the country. After Kim Jong-il's death since 2011, the leader of the country is Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il's son and Kim Il-sung's grandson. The judicial system of the DPRK includes the Central Court, provincial courts, the cities of the Central Submission, national courts and special courts. Article 147, 162. Bodies of judicial authority are formed on the elective beginnings. The chairman of the Central Court is elected deputies of the Supreme People's Assembly for 5 years, judges and jurymen of the Central Court, Presidium of Venens. Article 110. The Central Court is responsible before Venens and Presidium of Venens during the period between sessions. Provincial. The cities of the Central Submission. Courts and national courts. In the cities, districts or urban areas. Are responsible in the activity before the relevant people's assemblies. trial of affairs in vessels opened, to the defendant of the right to the protection, but a court session are closed in the limits set by the law to providing. Public prosecutors' supervision is exercised by the Supreme Prosecutor's Office, provincial and district prosecutors' offices. Local public authorities are the people's assemblies elected for a period of 4 years. Local executive bodies are national committees. Till 1998, administrative committees were executive bodies, and national committees were permanent bodies of people's assemblies. The United Democratic Domestic Front, UDFI, created in 1946. The leading role in EDOF belongs to the Workers' Party of Korea. 3 parties are a part of the front. The Workers' Party of Korea, created in October 1945. The ruling party of the DPRK, her leading role is recorded in the Constitution. Ideology of party is Jewish. The Social Democratic Party of Korea, Social Democratic, is created in November 1945. Recognizes the leading key role. The Kanoja Shonudan Party, Party of Young Friends of Religion of a Heavenly Way, Conservative, is created in 1946. Recognizes the leading key role. Holidays. On January 1, New Year. On February 16, Day of the Shining Star. On March 2, Day of Planting of Trees. On March 8, the International Women's Day. On April 15, Day of the Sun. On April 25, Day of Foundation of the Korean National Army. On May 1, the International Labor Day. On June 9, Day of Foundation of the Union of Children of Korea. On July 27, the Victory Day in Patriotic Liberating War. On August 15, Day of Release of the Homeland. On August 25, Putsongan. On September 9, Day of Formation of the National Government. On October 10, Day of Foundation of the Workers' Party of Korea. On December 27, Day of the Socialist Constitution. Lunar Calendar. Number 1 of Lunar Month Solo. 15 Number 1 of Lunar Month Tabori. On April 4, 5 Kohamian. 5 Number 5 of Lunar Month Tano. 15 Number 8 of Lunar Month Chohusek. In the DPRK there is a developed film industry making movies in the spirit of socialist realism with the Korean specifics. Also animated movies are made. It is claimed that North Korean animators quite often execute orders for the European and American studios. The DPRK is the secular state, most of the population atheists. In the constitution of the DPRK it is told that the freedom of worship is guaranteed to citizens. Chapter 5, Article 68. In the DPRK the church is separated from the state. The country leaders conduct atheistic promotion and resolute fight against religion. Now in the DPRK 2 Christian temples work. 1 Catholic. Not recognizing the authorities of the Holy See. And 1 Orthodox Christian. Nominally, the interests of Christians are represented by the Korean Christian Association. Orthodox believers are united by Orthodox Committee Nieder. The DPRK is popular both traditional Korean and many Western sports. Since 1975 in the DPRK transitioned to general compulsory 11 years education, including 1 year preschool, is carried out. In the sphere of the higher and secondary vocational education, preparation on technical specialties prevails. The largest higher educational institution of the DPRK, the University of Kim Il-sung. In the DPRK there is the state medical care and the system of medical insurance. Expenses on healthcare make about 3% of GDP. Since 1950 the country pays much attention to healthcare. So, during the period between 1955 and 1986 the number of hospitals grew from 285 to 2401, the number of polyclinics, since 1020 to 5644. There are hospitals at factories and mines. Since 1979 a bigger emphasis was placed on the traditional Korean medicine based on treatment by herbs and acupuncture. The situation with medical care of the population in the DPRK sharply worsened after 1990 as a result of natural disasters, economic problems and the shortage of energy. Access to water has nearly 100% of the population, but it isn't always suitable for drink. Infectious diseases, such as tuberculosis, malaria and hepatitis are endemic in the country. Average life expectancy in North Korea -70. 7 years, the 157th place in the world by estimates of CIA for 2017. On August 21, 2018 during visit of the plant on production of the medical equipment in the province of Gyeongbuk-do the leader of the DPRK Kim Jong-un criticized a North Korean healthcare system, having said that in this sphere there is nothing to be proud. The national economy, mixed with a big share of the state intervention. Picture is the isolation from the rest of the world, and as since the beginning of the 1960th years of the DPRK doesn't publish any economic statistics, all data on her economy are external expert estimates. During an era of existence of the USA national economy relied on the Soviet help in the first post-war years. After the end of the Korean War of 1950-1953, developed quite dynamically. The jump in prices of oil in 1974 negatively affected development of the country. In 1980 in the country there was a default, and throughout all the 1980th production fell. With the collapse of the USA the negative trends generated by a default of 1980 amplified and, including in connection with natural disasters, led to large-scale hunger in the mid-90s. At the same time the international community provided not less large-scale humanitarian aid. According to emigrants, most of the efficient population of the DPRK informally earns in the private sector because of low compensation from the state enterprises. The illegal market based on realization of smuggling from China is widely developed. The monetary reform of 2009 was intended to strengthen a planned economic system and to reduce market influence. However, according to some information, reform led to the sharp growth of inflation and deficiency of essentials. At the beginning of 2010, the chairman of the State Plan Committee of the DPRK, responsible for this reform, Pak Namki, was dismissed, and in the middle of March, is shot. According to some available data, after that Kim Jong-un, the Prime Minister of North Korea, publicly apologized to the people for an unsuccessful monetary reform. Gain of DDD since 2006 is estimated as 1% a year. The budget of 2002, $10.1 billion. Industry share in DDD in 2002, 34%. The agriculture share in DDD makes 30%. Because of mountainous relief, the country tests tension in land resources. The total area of farmlands is a little more than 20% of all territory, and arable lands, only 16%. On average, 0.12 hectares of the processed lands are the share of one inhabitant of the Republic, that is 3-4 times less than in the majority of the European countries. The main branch of agriculture, crop production. 17% of the territory are processed, from them 2/3 it is irrigated. Cultivate grain, soybeans, a cotton, a flax, tobacco, sugar beet. Ginseng plantations. Vegetable growing. Fruit growing. Livestock production. Cattle, pigs, bird. Silkworm breeding. Fishery, production of seafood. The majority of the cultivated lands is located in the south and in the west of the country. These lands suffered from a flood in 1995, 1996 and from a drought in 1997 and 2000. In 2002 the country had a livestock in 48,000 horses, 575,000 heads of cattle, 2.6 million goats. In 2001 200,000 tons of fish were caught and tons of other seafood are collected. Despite it, in the country the deficiency of products was always observed. Collectivization took place in 1958. In agriculture, after reforms of 2002, rearrangement of collective farms and the enterprises of family type began. Large reserves of ores of the collar and alloy metals. Copper, zinc, lead, nickel, tungsten, molybdenum and others. Export of non-ferrous metals, the most important source of foreign currency. From 1998 years, after considerable reduction of supply of fuel from the USSR and China, the DDRK has problems in power industry. Within the 1998 year, 27.7 billion due were developed. The electric power, by 2002 this value decreased up to 19 billion due. As a result, in the satellite pictures made at night, the DDRK, except for Pyongyang, looks as a dark stain in northern Asia. The modern electrical power industry is based on use of the hydroenergy resources, estimated approximately at 10 million due, and solid fuel in the form of anthracite and brown coal. In 2001 on hydroelectric power station about 69% of the electric power of the country were developed, the rest is received for the account of combustion of coal. In 2005 the country consumed barrels of oil a day and made only 138. The forest, oil processing, chemical, textile and food industries develop. The Fiat cars of local assembly and serves are manufactured in the DDRK. The Tokhonsky Automobile Works, Sini, releases trucks. The DDRK supports commercial relations more than with 100 countries. Commodity turnover volume in 2002 was $2.4 billion. The main foreign trade partners of the DPRK, the Republic of Korea, $642 million. China, $550 million. Japan, $500 million. EU countries, $250 million. Russia, $130 million. The external debt of the DPRK, by estimates of the USA, makes $25 billion. 2000. Including Russia -$8 billion, China -$4.5 billion. In 2010, the foreign trade turnover of the People's Republic of China and the DPRK reached $3.5 billion. The surplus of trade relations was $1.3 billion in favor of the People's Republic of China. In export of the DPRK seafood. On a catch of fish and other seafood, the country is included into the first 20 in the world. -24.4% of the total amount of export prevail. Products of the textile industry -21.6%. Machines, the equipment, electrical equipment -15.1%. Metals -9.3%. Minerals -7.8%. Products of chemical industry -6%. The main articles of export from the DPRK are also anthracite, ginseng and other medicines of traditional medicine. In 2012, more than 67% of a foreign trade turnover of NIEDER were the share of the People's Republic of China. According to the statistics of Katra, in the past specified 2-year foreign trade of the DPRK with the countries of the world made in total $2,840 million, that is 48.8% less in comparison with an indicator of 2017. At the same time, falling of North Korean export is especially noticeable. It in a year was reduced by 86.3%. Having made only $240 million. Import to North Korea from other countries dropped by 31.2% to $2,600 million. Thus, the trade deficit of the DPRK was $2,360 million, that it is more than in 2017 for 17.5%. The transport network of the country is rather developed but became outdated. In 1990 in the country there were about 3,000 km of roads, from which only about 1,700 asphalted. After natural disasters in the mid-90s, road infrastructure strongly suffered, and now the total length of roads -25554 km, from which 724 km asphalted. The largest and well-remained highway, from Pyongyang to Wonsan, about 200 km long. Railway transport is widespread. The railway system has length of 5235 km, from which 3500 km are electrified. Because of large reserves of coal in the country, engines for draft of freight and passenger trains are still used. It is a lot of rivers passing across the territory of the DPRK, are the additional waterway. Total length of waterways is 2250 km. Large ports are the cities of Hamgyong, Konsin, Kimchek, Haeju and Nampeo. The number of the airports -78, helipads -23. The main airline, Air Koryo, is the state company, with regular flights to Beijing, Bangkok, Macau and Vladivostok. City transport is the most developed in the capital of the country, where the population moves by trams, trolleybuses and the subway. Because of the shortage of fuel, buses are used seldom. Cars are also rare, but bicycles became the main way of movement of wide segments of the population. The policy of isolationism, long time carried out by the government of North Korea, led to the fact that the international tourism in the country is developed poorly. Foreign tourists in North Korea most of all are attracted by natural sights and the neo-Stalinist atmosphere in the country. Growth of number of foreign tourists is observed. So if in 2000 the country was visited by nearly car tourists, then in 2012 this number increased to 250,000 people, among whom the most part, 240,000, was made by citizens of the People's Republic of China and about 5,000–6,000 citizens of the developed countries of the West. South Korean citizens have to get special permission from the governments of the Republic of Korea and the DPRK to drive to the country. At the beginning of the 21st century, the area of mountains Kimgyeonsan located near South Korean border was approved as the special tourist area where South Korean citizens don't need the entry visa. The DPRK is the popular direction for the Chinese tourists. It is connected with the fact that for the Chinese citizens, entry into the country is significantly facilitated in comparison with citizens of other states. Besides, in North Korea there are special casinos for foreigners. In China they are forbidden. Also, Chinese tourists are attracted by low cost of many goods in North Korea in comparison with China. In 2008, the Austrian traveler Helmut Uttenthaler managed to pass in the DPRK in the through car the message Moscow, Pyongyang. X. In 2012, for residents of the far east of Russia, the new destination, the economic zone Nasan, opened. In 1990 years, North Korea faced considerable economic complications. Among them, a number of natural disasters, mismanagement and a lack of resources after disintegration of East Bloc. They resulted in the shortage of grain production on more than 1 million tons from the allowance recognized as the international community necessary for ensuring the minimum high-calorie needs of the population. Hunger in North Korea, known as a difficult campaign, led to death, by different estimates, from 30 to 800,000 people annually during the 3-year period, having reached peak in 1997. The majority of death, most likely, was caused by the diseases connected with hunger, among them pneumonia, tuberculosis and dysentery. In 2006, the Amnesty International organization reported that the national inspection of food, which is carried out by the government of North Korea with assistance of the World Food Programme and the United Nations Children's Fund, found out that 7% of children cruelly suffer from malnutrition and are in a condition of exhaustion. 37% undereat chronically. 23.4% suffer from insufficiency of weight. 1 of 3 mothers undereats and has anemia as a result of effect of long starvation. The inflation caused in 2002 by economic reforms, including policy, Songan Army first of all, led to increase of the prices of the main food. The history of the Japanese help to North Korea is noted by a number of problems. Beginning from pressure of big pro-Pyongyang community of Koreans in Japan, finishing with public indignation concerning starts of North Korean rockets and kidnapping of the Japanese citizens. In June of the 1995th year, the agreement on humanitarian assistance was reached. South Korea provided tons of grain in unmarked bags, Japan provided gratuitously tons and more tons on favorable terms. In October of the 1995th year and January of the 1996th year, North Korea asked Japan for the help again. In these two cases, both from which were come on peak of North Korean hunger, opposition from the outside of South Korea and internal political sources led to cancellation of the transaction. Since 1997, the USA began delivery of food aid to North Korea within the World Food Program of the Union (MP) on fight against hunger. Deliveries reached a maximum in 1999 at nearly 4 tons of grain. At Bush's administration, the help was reduced from 4 tons in 2001 to 4,000 in 2004 from year to year. Bush's administration was criticized for use of food as weapon during negotiations on the nuclear program of the DPRK. As a result of the transformations which are carried out in 2012-2013 in the agrarian sphere. So-called "I died on June 28, 2012 and I died on May 30, 2014. In the DPRK, harvest sharply grew. According to a harvest of 2013, the first harvest in 25 years, which is enough for North Korea to support itself. The harvest of 2014 was even more record. The Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations on Humanitarian Issues Mark Lowcock announced on July 11, 2018 increase in volumes of humanitarian aid in Nieder. As of 2018, the army of the DPRK totaled card people and was a heel. According to other data, the fourth in size in the world after at least China, the USA and India, and all this at population in 2018 in 25 million people and economic stagnation. In a reserve there are about 5.6 million people, from whom 600,000 are participants of Workers' and Peasants' Red Guard. Completing at the call of. The number of types of military forces looks as follows. EVs about 1.1 million people, including 88,000 fighters of special troops. Naval forces minus 60,000 people, the Air Force minus 110,000. Quasi-military security formations, boundary protection and bodies of protection of public law and order total 189,000 more people. North Korea spends 27% of quota for the maintenance of army. In the DPRK essentially there are no civil construction organizations, and all construction in the country is carried out by military builders who respectively make a considerable part from overall strength of the army. On February 8, 2018 the parade and a meeting devoted to the 70th anniversary from the date of foundation of the Korean National Army, a day before the official opening ceremony of the Olympic Games in South Korea at Kim Il-sung Square in Pyongyang, the capital of Nieder, was held. The management of armed forces and military construction is carried out by the State Committee of Defense of the DPRK, at the head of which there is a Supreme Commander, the Marshal of the DPRK Kim Jong-un. The Chairman of the State Committee of Defense of the DPRK orders and directs all armed forces and knows defense of the country in general. In the DPRK there is an obligatory compulsory military service. Citizens on reaching 17 years are exposed to an appeal. Service life of recruits in ground forces makes 12 years. The main associations and connections of ground forces are the Army, the case, a division and crew. The Army of constant structure has no, and is developed on the basis of Army cases. Service life of the recruit in the Air Force and Air Defense makes 4 years. Service life of the recruit in Navy makes 10 years. From the middle of the 1990th years of the DPRK almost completely satisfies requirements of the Army for artillery and shooting arms, separate samples VV. The organizational structure of armed forces for 2018 looked as follows. The Ground Forces, DPRK, in organizational structure have 15 cases. 2 mechanized, 12 infantry, the case of defense of Pyongyang. As a part of these cases there are 1 armored division, 4 mechanized divisions, 27 infantry divisions, 15 armored brigades, 9 crews of ARZO, 14 infantry brigades, 1 artillery division, 21 artillery crews. Under Special Purpose Command SIL is available -88,000 servicemen who are distributed between 6 sniper crews, 9 crews of easy infantry, 8 special purpose detached battalions, 17 detached prospecting battalions, 3 airborne brigades, 1 airborne battalion, 2 airborne sniper crews and 2 sniper crews of Marines. In a reserve of ground forces there are 40 infantry divisions and 18 infantry brigades. The navies, and which headquarters is located in Pyongyang, are organizationally divided into 2 fleet. The Fleet of East Sea, the headquarters in Nagvona, and the Fleet of the Western Sea, the headquarters in Nampio. The first has 9 naval bases, the second -10. The Air Force, AF, includes 4 commands, 33 regiments, plus 3 detached battalions. 3 commands are responsible for northern, east and southern defensive sectors, the 4th training is responsible for the northeast sector. The Air Force has 11 air bases, generally in the area border with South Korea, a little in border with China. The main part of forces is developed along well-strengthened demilitarized zone. By estimates, on arms of the Korean National Army about 3,500 main tanks, 560 light tanks, 2,500 units of armored personnel carriers and the lightly armored equipment, 3,500 trunks of the towed artillery, 4,400 SA, 2,500 ARZO, 7,500 mortars, 24 PU rockets of the class Earth, a known quantity of PU atom, 1,700 recoilless tools consist. In ground forces there are about anti-aircraft guns. As a part of the fleet there are 92 place, 3 frigates, 6 corvettes, 43 rocket boats and mirrors, 158 sentry patrolmen. Ships, 103 torpedo boats, 334 patrol boats, 10 landing ships, 2 batteries of coastal defense, 130 hovercrafts, 23 trawlers, 1 mothership, 8 small vessels, 4 support vessels. As a part of the Air Force there are 80 bombers, 541 fighter and the strike fighter, about 316 transport planes, 588 transport multipurpose helicopters, 24 combat helicopters, 228 educational and training planes, at least 1 PLA. North Korea has military advisors in 12 African states. The basis of the military doctrine of the country is made by active defense. Much attention is paid to actions of prospecting and diversionary groups. Data of such troops in large connections are the decision, unique, typical only for North Korea. Quite often researchers call the beginning of nuclear activity of North Korea 1952, when the decision on creation of Research Institute of Atomic Energy was made. Real creation of nuclear infrastructure began in the mid-60s. In 1959, the DPRK signed contracts on cooperation in peaceful use of nuclear energy with CCC and People's Republic of China and began construction of the research center in Yongbyon, where in 1965 the Soviet Erd-20 reactor with a power of 2 million was installed. The Erd-20 reactor is a research light water reactor of basin type and with the water beryllium reflector of neutrons. As fuel in this reactor, rather strongly enriched uranium is applied. In 1985 in Yongbyon, construction of one more nuclear reactor began, design capacity of 50 megawatts. Then Erdkonchkan construction of the reactor with a power of 200 megawatts began. By estimates of experts, these reactors have dual purpose: electricity generation and receiving weapon plutonium. Works on creation of nuclear weapon were begun in the 1970th years. In 1974 the DPRK entered IAEA. The same year Pyongyang asked for the help in creation of nuclear weapon China. North Korean experts were allowed on the Chinese grounds. According to the declassified data, in 1994 the United States President B. Clinton, together with the Minister of Defense William Perry, considered the possibility of drawing missile strike at the nuclear reactor in Yongbyon. However, after analytical data were requested from the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States Armed Forces General John Shalikashvili, it became clear that the similar blow can lead to a full-scale war with a large number of the American and South Korean losses and also huge losses among the civilian population. Therefore, Clinton's administration was forced to go to unprofitable, about her points of view, framework agreements with North Korea. In 2003, negotiations on the nuclear program of the DPRK with participation of the People's Republic of China, the USA, Russia, South Korea and Japan began. The first 3 rounds, August 2003, February and June 2004, didn't bring special results. And from participation in the 4th, planned for September, Pyongyang evaded in connection with the next aggravation of the American-Korean and fucking Korean relationship. Hope for successful permission of nuclear crisis on the Korean peninsula for the first time appeared on the 3rd round of 6-party talks, which took place during the period from June 23 to June 26, 2004, when the USA agreed to remuneration for freezing. In response to it, North Korea stated that it is ready to refrain from production, tests and transfer of nuclear weapon and to freeze all objects concerning weapons of Massachusetts destruction. The USA put forward the project of transfer of nuclear objects of the DPRK under temporary international management of the Commission of 5 Powers, or IAEA. Further elimination of North Korean nuclear objects under the international control was offered. But North Korea didn't agree also with this option. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the DPRK expressed dissatisfaction results of negotiations. On September 9, 2004, the South Korean spy satellite recorded the strongest explosion in the remote region of the DPRK province of Yanggangdo, near border with China. On the place of explosion there was a crater seen from space, and over the scene a huge fungoid cloud with a diameter about 4 kilometers grew. On September 13, the authorities of the DPRK explained the emergence of a cloud similar to a nuclear mushroom. Explosive works in the process of construction of hydroelectric power station Samosa. In Yanggangdo, two largest rivers of this region, Anakan and Tumangang, originate. On September 16, 2004, the DPRK stated that it won't participate in six-party talks on a North Korean nuclear problem before clearing of a situation with confidential uranium and plutonium mine markings in South Korea. At the beginning of September, South Korea recognized that in 2000 it received a small amount of the enriched uranium. According to officials, all experiments had a specially scientific character and were soon completely curtailed. On February 10, 2005, the DPRK for the first time openly announced creation in the country of nuclear weapon. On October 9, 2006, the first nuclear explosion was made. In April 2012, amendments about the nuclear status of the country were made to the constitution of the DPRK. In July 2005, after long informal consultations, the DPRK agreed to return at a table of six-party talks on the nuclear program in Beijing. As a condition of the DPRK, made one demand that the USA recognized North Korea as the partner and was respectful to her. On October 9, 2006, the DPRK declared successful carrying out a nuclear test. It was said in the statement of the Korean Central News Agency, KCNA, our research division safely and successfully made an underground nuclear test. The nuclear test became a historical event which brought happiness to our military and the people. The nuclear test will bring a contribution to peacekeeping and stability on the Korean peninsula and in the adjacent area. On May 25, 2009, the DPRK conducted nuclear tests again. Power of underground nuclear explosion, according to the Russian military, was from 10 to 20 kilotons. On February 12, 2013, the United States Geological Survey recorded tremors measuring 4.9, which epicenter was in the area of the North Korean nuclear test site. The Nuclear Monitoring Union Agency declared the unusual seismic phenomenon, with characteristics of explosion. On the same day, the Korean Central News Agency officially announced a successful nuclear test. Considering that on December 12, 2012, the DPRK for the first time put to orbit the artificial satellite, Kwanmunson-3, that caused new crisis. On December 10, 2015, Kim Jong-un declared presence at the DPRK of hydrogen bomb. On January 6, 2016, in the territory of the DPRK, the earthquake measuring 5.1, which was connected with carrying out underground nuclear explosion, was registered. North Korea declared carrying out the first in the history successful test of a hydrogen bomb. In the world, experts expressed doubts that the DPRK detonated hydrogen bomb. On September 9, 2016 at 9:30 in the morning local time in the territory of the DPRK, the seismic event measuring 5.3 is recorded. His epicenter was near the settlement located in 20 kilometers from the nuclear Punggye test site. The United States Geological Survey classified tremors as explosion. Later the DPRK officially announced the fifth nuclear test. Explosion power assessment, from 10 to 30 kilotons. On September 3, 2017, seismic stations of the different countries recorded powerful tremors in the territory of the DPRK. Magnitude of earthquake was estimated in the range from 6.1 to 6.4. At the same time, scientists said that the seismic center was on the Earth's surface. Pushes occurred at 12:30 local time in the province of Hamgyongpukto, where the North Korean nuclear Punggye test site is located. The authorities of North Korea announced successful test of a warhead with a thermonuclear charge. Explosion power by estimates of the Japanese seismologists was up to 100 kilotons, that exceeds the power of the charge tested on September 9, 2016 10 times. On September 14, 2021 in Tokyo there took place tripartite negotiations on the issues of peace and security on the Korean peninsula. Renewal of the further dialogue with the government of the DPRK aimed at a further denuclearization of the Korean peninsula became the main subject of discussion. On October 4, 2021 the Union published the report in which it is said that the DPRK at the moment, despite all sanctions imposed early, actively continues to develop the nuclear program, being engaged in creation and development of ballistic missiles. On October 4, 2021 the official representative of the United States Department of State Ned Price expressed the need of full compliance with sanctions of the UN Security Council against the DPRK. He also urged Pyongyang to observe the resolutions of the Union forbidding to test or develop weapons of Massachusetts destruction. United States authorities accuse intelligence agencies of the DPRK of numerous acts of cyber espionage, blackmail and extortion. In February 2021 the Deputy Attorney General of the USA for National Security Issues E. John Dimers of N called the DPRK a well-known criminal syndicate. 16.02 2021 United States authorities brought to 3 citizens of the DPRK charge of attempt of extortion and plunder from banks and the companies worldwide for the sum more than $1.3 billion of jaw. According to Ministry of Justice of the USA, defendants serve in management of foreign intelligence of the General Staff of the DPRK. As of 2013, Democratic People's Republic of Korea maintains diplomatic relations with 161 member states of the Union and also with observers at the Union. With her 31 countries, including the USA and Japan, have no diplomatic relations. The leader of the DPRK, Kim Jong-un, at a plenary session of the 8th convocation of the Central Committee of Labour Party of the DPRK, reported about the new directions of policy and tasks connected with the inter-Korean and external relationship. Medvedev with the chairman of the State Committee of Defense of the DPRK, Kim Jong-il. Nude, on August 24, 2011. After the collapse of the USA, contacts of Russia with the DPRK strongly weakened. In 1994, after the death of the President Kim Il-sung's son, the President of Russia Boris Yeltsin didn't even direct the telegram of a condolence to the North Korean government put according to the diplomatic protocol. Only in 2000 the first visit of the Russian President Vladimir Putin to Pyongyang took place. Then agreements on activization of political contacts and development of measures for restoration of economic cooperation were reached. In recent years, intergovernmental agreements on air traffic, on cultural cooperation, on encouragement and mutual protection of capital investments, on avoidance of double taxation, on mutual trips of citizens, on economic and technical cooperation are signed. About cooperation in the forest industry, in customs affairs, in the sphere of fight against crime and protection of law and order, in the field of use of navigation satellite systems. In May 2014, the agreement on transition to rubles in calculations between the DPRK and Russia was signed. Also on May 5, the agreement on write-off of all Korean debts to Russia was signed. In March 2014, the DPRK supported annexation of the Crimea to Russia. Also, the DPRK supported a position of Russia on Ukraine. On May 6, 2016, the employee of the Emma of Russia Maria Zakharova said that Russia will carry out decisions of the Union Security Council which provides imposition of economic sanctions concerning the DPRK. This decision concerns also the Russian banks which cooperated with the DPRK. August 7, 2018. The Committee of the Security Council, founded by Resolution 1718, made the seventh decision on assistance, the entitled Management for Humanitarian Assistance of the DPRK. On April 25, 2019, the chairman of the State Council of the DPRK, Kim Jong-un, for the first time paid to Russia an official visit. Within the visit, Kim Jong-un met the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The parties discussed issues of a denuclearization, regional cooperation and also development of a bilateral relationship. As both countries apply for all Korean Peninsula and everyone considers herself the only lawful pretender to these lands, in the history of interaction of the South and the North periodically there are diplomatic scandals connected with penetration of the armed equipment on the territory of the opponent, stealing and even murders of citizens. On August 16, 2004, the DPRK announced refusal to participate in a meeting of the Working Group on preparation of the next round of six-party talks on settlement of nuclear crisis on the Korean Peninsula. This decision is caused by recent actions of South Korea which took out on the territory from Vietnam 460 North Korean deserters. The DPRK reacted to this event very painfully, having accused the authorities of South Korea of kidnapping of North Korean citizens. South Korean intelligence, in return, warned about danger of acts of punishment from the DPRK, having advised the Southern Koreans who are living or leaving to China and the countries of Southeast Asia and also activists of the organizations helping deserters to get over from the north out of borders of the DPRK, to pay special attention to the safety. At the beginning of 2009 there was the next aggravation of the inter-Korean relationship. On January 30, 2009, the authorities of the DPRK declared cancellation of all earlier reached agreements with South Korea. In official statements it is said that South Korea is guilty of continuous escalation of hostile actions. In May 2009, the DPRK conducts the second nuclear weapons test. In the same days it declares a withdrawal from a treaty about ceasefire with South Korea, concluded in 1953. Actually, it means introduction of martial law with South Korea. On January 17, 2010, the head of the DDR, Kim Jong-il, expressed the need to strengthen armed forces of the state. He made such statement during visit of military joint exercises of ground forces, naval and the air force of the country, Associated Press with reference to local media tells. Earlier State Committee of Defense of the DDR warned South Korea about a possibility of the announcement against her of holy war and reported about complete cessation of dialogue between two states. Tough reaction of the North Korean side followed after the Republic of Korea unveiled the extraordinary plan which provided rapid offensive operation mines the DDR in case of critical need. March 26, 2010, as a result of external explosion, the corvette belonging to naval forces of South Korea, Cheonan, is sunk. The submarine belonging to armed forces of the DDR is announced by responsible for sinking of the ship. The sharp strain of relations which resulted from an incident amplified even more after the president of South Korea, Lee Myung-bak, announced the fastest application of drastic measures in relation to NIADA. Official representatives of the North deny the fact of participation of the Navy of the DDR in sinking of the South Korean ship. The government of the DDR promises to begin full-scale war in case of application by South Korea of any sanctions against their state. On May 25, 2010, Kim Jong-il ordered to alert troops of the DDR. The DDR breaks off diplomatic relations with South Korea. On July 24, 2010, the DDR threatened South Korea with nuclear war in response to the beginning of sea exercises, joint with the USA, on July 25, 2010. It transfers the central news agency of the DDR. CED. With reference to the Ministry of Defense of the country, the DDR is ready to powerful nuclear punishment, and to the beginning of the Holy Nuclear War, mines the USA and South Korea. On November 23, 2010, the artillery of the DDR fired at the South Korean island of Yeonpyeong in the Yellow Sea. As a result of firing, 14 South Korean servicemen are wounded, 3 from them got severe wounds, 4 died. It was reported also that the part of houses of the civilian population is destroyed. According to messages of South Korean media, in the first 12 minutes on the island about 150 volleys from the territory of the DDR were fired, from them about 80 shells hit the mark. South Korea released in reply 50 shells, then both parties exchanged 20-30 more volleys from each party. On May 29, 2013, the DDR suggested South Korea to sign the peace treaty instead of the agreement in force on truce concluded later the ends of the Korean War of 1950-1953. On March 31, 2014, in the Yellow Sea around disputable Western Sea border, there was a firefight between South Korean and North Korean military. North Korea declared previously conducting exercises. According to the message of South Korean military, the military personnel of South Korea opened reciprocal gunfire after the DDR fired at South Korean territorial waters. On May 22, 2014, South Korea and the DDR exchanged artillery volleys in the Yellow Sea. According to the message of South Korean military, the coastal artillery of the DDR released 2 artillery shells in the direction of the South Korean high-speed boat near the island of Yeonpyeong in the Yellow Sea in response to what the Navy of South Korea released 5 shells in North Korean waters. Next day, the DDR stated that the South Korean side opened fire of the first. On October 4, 2014, for the first time in 5 years, negotiations at the high level between the DPRK and South Korea took place. The delegation of the DPRK, headed by the Vice Chairman of the State Committee of Defense of the DPRK, Wang Pyeongbut, made an unexpected visit to South Korea on the occasion of the end of Asian Games in Incheon. During the visit, the delegation of the DPRK met the high-ranking officials of South Korea, among whom there were a Prime Minister Chong Hun-won, the Assistant to the President concerning Foreign Policy and Safety Kim Ji-in, and the Minister of Association Ru Gil-jae. On October 7, 2014, patrol boats of South Korea and the DPRK exchanged shots after the North Korean boat broke sea border of South Korea near the island in the Yellow Sea. The South Korean patrol boat didn't sustain any damage. Damages weren't noticed also at the North Korean boat. In total, towards the North Korean boat which broke border, about 90 shots were made. On October 10, 2014, on the inter-Korean overland border there was a firefight. According to the message of South Korean military, fire was opened by the North Korean side after the South Korean public organization sent through border balloons with propaganda leaflets. The South Korean side returned fire. From South Korea nobody suffered. Also, it wasn't reported about victims, and from Niet Air. On October 19, 2014, South Korea and the DPRK exchanged fire on overland border. South Korea opened precautionary fire after North Korean soldiers approached a military line of demarcation near the city of Podsu. North Korea returned fire. Messages about the victims from South Korea and the DPRK didn't arrive. On August 21, 2015, in response to American-South Korean exercises during which offensive actions in relation to the DPRK were fulfilled, Kim Jong-un gave the order to result the Korean National Army in full combat readiness by 17 o'clock local time. On May 8, 2016, the Marshal of the DPRK Kim Jong-un urged the country to be ready to power reunion with South Korea in case of aggression, means Pyongyang. RIA Novosti, with reference to the full text of a performance of Kim Jong-un at the 7th Congress of Labour Party of Korea, writes in the Rodong Sinmun newspaper. In National Army, it is necessary to support at the highest level willingness for reckless military provocations of the American imperialism and South Korean soldiery against our republic, and if enemies kindle warfare, then it is necessary to punish ruthlessly aggressors and to complete historical business of reunion of the homeland, the North Korean leader said. Also, he urged to establish such atmosphere in society at which each person would be ready to begin reunion of the country in case of aggression, means the DPRK. On April 27, 2018, the Inter-Korean Summit, at which Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in expressed intention to hold negotiations for formal establishment of the peace treaty, took place. July 14, 2018. The Committee of the Union Security Council supported the application of the Republic of Korea for an exception of the list of the military goods forbidden for deliveries of the DPRK, the equipment for recovery of operation of communication lines between military of two countries. November 2004, within a week past a final round of negotiations between the DPRK and Japan on the Japanese citizens kidnapped in 1970 in Pyongyang, the 1988 years North Korean intelligence. By this moment of the DPRK released 5 kidnapped persons and dicks of their families. Earlier, Kim Jong-un recognized that all kidnapped persons, there were 13 people, but the fate of the others is unknown. Japan accuses the DPRK of unwillingness to disclose information on their destiny and to give them in case they're still alive. Everything that Japanese could receive during negotiations are 7 containers with personal belongings and documents of kidnapped persons. December 2004, public opinion of Japan is expressed for imposition of sanctions in connection with scandal over the ashes transferred to Tokyo in November by the North Korean authorities. The DNA analysis of remains showed that they belonged not to the Japanese girl Megumi Yoko, kidnapped in 1977 by intelligence agencies of the DPRK, and 2 other people who weren't among the kidnapped Japanese. On December 10, the National Diet urged the government to consider a question of application to the DPRK of economic sanctions. As the first step, the government made the decision to stop rendering the DPRK food aid. In the National Diet discussion of a question of sanctions which can provide closing of the Japanese ports for North Korean vessels. The ban on the transfer to the DPRK of means from the Koreans living in Japan and another became more active. On June 27, 2009, the DPRK threatened to shoot down any Japanese plane in the space. The Air Force of the Korean National Army won't suffer any manifestations of air espionage from warmongers in the Japanese aggressive forces, and will ruthlessly shoot down any plane which will dare to intrude in territorial airspace of the DPRK even on 1000 mm, is emphasized in the message of STEP. On March 10, 2016, the warhead started by the DPRK fell in the Sea of Japan. USA. Official bodies of the USA accused the DPRK of the provocations directed against South Korea, Japan and the USA. A part of similar incidents in 60 was the 70th years the response to actions of the American intelligence services. For example, hijacking of the vessel Pueblo in 1968. Other part, according to Congressional Research Service, included stealing, taking of hostages, airliners, terrorist attacks and attempts of elimination of current presidents of South Korea. The USA and the DPRK still has no diplomatic relations. The establishment of diplomatic relations planned for the beginning of the 1990th years didn't take place, though it was one of paragraphs of the Framework Agreement of 1994, under the terms of which the DPRK then froze the nuclear program. The USA didn't fulfill contractual obligations. The DPRK is peculiar, independent and extremely aggressive. Militaristic foreign policy. The above stated diplomatic collisions rather well illustrate approach of a leaders of the Republic to conducting the international affairs. According to the employee of the Russian Institute of Strategic Researches Vladimir Fyodorovich Terekov, similar strategy says that the country has high-quality experts capable to predict consequences in a game on extreme aggravation. In the DPRK, over 30 newspapers and magazines are issued, including in the English, French, Spanish, Japanese, Russian and Chinese languages. The main editions appearing in Pyongyang. Rodon Sinman. The working newspaper. Since 1945, the daily newspaper, body of the Central Committee of DPRK. Canada. Trudovik. Since 1946, the monthly theoretical and political magazine, body of the Central Committee of DPRK. Suminj Chosun. Democratic Korea. Since 1945, the daily newspaper. Tkonjal of Sinbo. Association News. Since 1972, the newspaper. Pyongyang. The Pyongyang newspaper. Since 1946. The daily newspaper, body of the Pyongyang City Town Committee of DPRK and City National Committee. Noden. Labor Youth. Since 1946, the daily newspaper, body of the Central Committee of the Komsomolsko-Komsomolsky Union of Youth. Pyongyang Times. The Pyongyang Times. Since 1965, the daily newspaper in English. Nouvelle de Kenyan. Les Nouvelles de Pyongyang. Since 1971, the daily newspaper in French. Also, all released literature is exposed to strict censorship. In the DPRK, the Korean Central News Agency, KCNA, founded in 1946, functions. Broadcasting in the DPRK is carried out by the Korean Central Broadcasting Station, KABS. The DPRK is the powerful system of broadcasting to foreign countries which is carried out by Voice of Korea radio station, the presenter of the program on short and average waves, and also via the satellite in 8 foreign languages, including Russian. In the DPRK, listening of foreign radio programs is forbidden and is punished by imprisonment. Only radio receivers with the fixed control for near-air stations are officially resolved. The television of the DPRK conducts transfers according to 4 programs, including 1 channel of cultural subject and TV channel from Kisung. Television receivers of the population are subject to obligatory registration, settings of frequencies are blocked and governing bodies are sealed up. A few years ago, transfers of text and Voices of Korea, including the Russian broadcasts, began to be broadcast on the Taitakum satellite on the territory of Asia. According to the statement of Freedom House, a television of North Korea, there is a continuous promotion, journalists are punished even for the slightest mistakes. The DPRK has on the internet own domain of the first KP level. On the C of July 2010, official Pyongyang shows considerable activity in video service of YouTube and the Twitter microblog that led to the next wave of censorship in South Korea. In the DPRK, there are internet cafes allowing to carry out internet connection. In 2007, the Ministry of National Safety of the country disposed to close them for some time. Now internet access for the most part of residents of the DPRK is closed. Internet access is issued for diplomatic objects and the separate foreign enterprises. However, tourists can be connected to the internet. In the country, the internal network, Kvanmian, which isn't connected to the internet, access to which is provided by phone lines through dial-up and since 2009 by means of the mobile internet functions. Among the Russian political scientists and publicists, there is a point of view about information plot of the Western media against near-air. So, the head of the Center of the Korean Researches of Institute of the Far East of Academy of Sciences of Russia A.Z. Zbin claims that Massachusetts media of the Western countries conduct the planned campaign for a demonizing of an image of near-air. According to the senior research associate of the Center of Akarivedina Vidraske, 5. Asmalav, the foreign organizations and media intentionally exaggerate the situation developing in the DPRK, around the DPRK myths propagate, and absolutely improbable, ducks, about life of citizens of this country and customs of the North Korean authorities regularly get to the press. Hey, 5. Asmilov doubts objectivity of work of the Union Commission on Human Rights, which report on the DPRK was published on February 17, 2014. Legalization of anti-North Korean propaganda, as the official document became result of work of the Commission, according to him. In Massachusetts media, the image of the DPRK as the country's negovovosposobny and not interested in negotiations is often drawn. However, a considerable part of regional crises with participation of the DPRK was settled at the initiative of the North Korean side. Opponents of similar approach, agreeing with unauthenticity of some messages about North Korea, specify that not promotion, but objective difficulties with obtaining information from NEADER is the reason of it. Criticism is also sparked by statements about peacefulness of North Korean policy. Experts note that the foreign policy of the DPRK is characterized by conscious forcing of tension and provoking of the conflicts with neighboring countries. They note that the North Korean side repeatedly took aggressive actions concerning neighbors, such as attempts of murder of South Korean leaders. For example, attempt on Park Chung-hee, including the acts of terrorism. Attempt at Chun Do-hwan, which caused the numerous victims. Massachusetts kidnapping of citizens of neighboring countries by North Korean agents, in particular citizens of Japan, among which there were even celebrities. For example, the South Korean director crossing Sanok. Hijacking of civilian airliners and the announcement of passengers by hostages. Capture of Korean Airlines Y-11N. And also terrorist attacks on board civilian airliners. Explosion of Boeing 707 over the Andaman Sea. Periodic provoking of the conflicts in the demilitarized zone, sometimes coming to an end with murders of people, as in case of an incident with cutting of 8-3. And also the direct military attacks on the territory of the Republic of Korea involving the victims among the civilian population, as in case of attack and shelling of the island of Yeonpyeong, that South Korea didn't dare to do even in the years of dictatorship. Also, they pay attention to the fact of an exit of the DPRK unilaterally from a ceasefire regime with South Korea. As the reasons of similar policy, researchers is called economic blackmail for the purpose of receiving sanctions eases and international aid, in the conditions of a deep economic crisis and rejection from the West. In addition, it is also noted that the contradictory rumors about the events in the DPRK extending through the Western media are generated, first of all, by closeness of North Korea, lack of freedom of speech and the totalitarian nature of her political regime that excludes a possibility of obtaining reliable information directly. At the same time, information which arrives from anonymous sources, it is very difficult to check. Even the Western intelligence services often have no adequate data on the events in North Korea. An important role is played by also North Korean propaganda. So, hey, 5. Asmilov notes that rumors about atrocities in the DPRK are often cultivated by ruling circles of the DPRK, for the purpose of creation of a frightening image and intimidation of opponents. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.